word of caution is there's no free lunch on Wall Street, which essentially means credit card companies exist because they're profitable and they make money off of interest that they charge on balances.
Any opinions are those of myself and not necessarily those of Raymond James. Expressions of opinion are as of this date and are subject to change without notice. The information contained in these podcasts do not purport to be a complete description of the securities market or developments referred to in this material. The information has been obtained from sources considered to be reliable, but we do not guarantee that the foregoing material is accurate or complete. Every investor situation is unique, and you should consider your investment goals, risk tolerance, and time horizon before making any investment. Prior to making an investment decision, please consult with your financial advisor about your individual situation. Any hypothetical examples are for illustration purposes only. Actual investor results will vary. Raymond James does not provide legal or tax services. Please discuss these matters with the appropriate professional.
Hard to recover. So we just want to get some education out there around how people are using them smartly. Maybe we can share some personal experience about how we use them in terms of for some, whether it's points for travel or cash back, et cetera, or where maybe there are some opportunities to use those types of things. So,
Do you have a credit card, Miles?
I do, but I think, they are smart to have if you can be responsible with them. But I was saying, and by responsible, I just mean, paying them off each month. Because there are advantages, I think, to having them in terms of, I kind of mentioned at the start there, like points, et cetera, and or cash back even. So if you can be smart with them, I think there are certainly advantages to having credit cards.
Yeah. And if you can be really smart with them, you can sometimes play the credit card game, which I do occasionally, which means I make a major purchase. I have some kind of bonus or whatever. I forget what they call them on credit cards. They want you to use their different, what is that called?
Like a sign-up bonus?
Yeah.
No, it's not a sign-up bonus, but just during the year, they'll come out.
Oh, they'll like run the promotions to where like this
promotion,
month,
right?
If it's like a cash back card, this month's 5%.
Yes.
On these
so
gas stations or restaurants, whatever.
Yeah.
It may be.
So for my promotions that I see, the ones that I take advantage of are the ones that say 10 months, 0 interest if paid off by this date. That can be risky, but if you're organized enough and you play the game right, it can save you a lot of money on interest as long as you pay that off on time. So like for me, we had something we had to pay for my daughter's wedding. I didn't want to come out of pocket with all that cash. So I said, I'm going to do this credit card thing for 10 months. Then I'll have a certain amount of it paid off, and then I'll just put down the cash then. So that just avoids all of that interest, which is horrible right now on credit cards. It's been horrible, but.
Yeah, I think the average credit card interest rate is nearing 30% when it comes to credit cards. So that's in a past episode, we've talked about the pros of higher interest rate environment. You can make a good amount of money on your savings, but on variable interest rate debt, it can really negatively impact you, especially on credit cards, because I think we all view, or the majority of how we use credit cards is for, consumption of goods and services in our everyday life, whether that's travel, eating out, paying your bills, etc. And the last thing you want to do is essentially borrow money and pay interest to make ends meet. And I think that's where you can end up getting into a bind with credit cards. And what I think, there's one approach, the Dave Ramsey approach, which is credit cards are the devil, which I don't necessarily agree with that. But I understand his philosophy and where he comes from, because it is on one hand, if you have a balance, it's outrageous the amount of interest that you're going to pay on that credit card. And two, it is easier to spend more money using a credit card because you are borrowing money on a monthly basis. It's not money that's coming out of your bank account immediately. You use a debit card, you swipe your card for $50 at Kroger for some groceries. You no longer have that cash immediately. You cannot overspend on a checking account. You put $50 on a credit card, you don't have to pay it off for if you swipe it at the beginning of the month, you've got 45, 50 days before you have to pay that off. So you can get it. It is a dangerous cycle if you don't watch yourself. So that's the real danger.
And about paying it off, something I do just because it makes me feel better is every month I actually pay my credit card off twice. I pay it off after every 2 weeks. I pay it off because then I feel like that's a manageable amount that I'm dealing with. If I wait until it's like the very end of the month or something, that's when I'm like, wow, that's a big bill. So
I do the
that's
same
just one
thing.
little tip.
Yep,
Yeah.
I probably do it, honestly, overkill like every week, just because I don't like to see the balance get very high.
Mm-hmm.
If it starts getting extremely high, yes, you might have the cash to pay it off, but that's just a high balance on a credit card, and I don't like seeing it personally.
Yeah.
And I know some people who just don't love seeing a balance on there will charge something, and as soon as it clears, they go in and pay it off, which is probably about the closest thing you can do to
Yeah,
treating a credit card like cash. Is when those transactions do hit, you go in and you immediately, do a transfer from your bank account to pay that money off. So,
Mhm.
yep.
I think that credit cards though can be a really good thing for like your credit report.
absolutely.
Um, even with my kids, trying to teach them how to be responsible with credit cards. They have excellent credit because when they were teenagers, I added them as an authorized user on my card. I didn't realize this was going to help their credit. They have fantastic credit because of that. That's just another little something you could do for your kids when they get older, when you're trying to help them with learn about how to handle credit cards.
And then just had like a small limit on there, like
Yeah.
500 or $1,000 or
Mhm.
something like that.
Or
To
you
so
can
Yeah.
have
maybe,
it.
Or I mean, they just know it's for emergencies,
yeah.
even if they don't use it at all, they still get the advantage of the good credit.
Or it essentially rolls up to your master credit card, and
It
then it's
does,
your
yes.
own balance to pay off.
Hmm.
They don't have to worry about the
Yeah, they
balance.
don't have to worry about paying anything. Yeah.
Right.
Now, sometimes I don't like to see certain things on there, but
Sure. That's for y'all to discuss.
yeah, that's right.
I think the world of benefits, my word of caution is there's no free lunch on Wall Street, which essentially means credit card companies exist because they're profitable and they make money off of interest that they charge on balances. So they offer these points and benefits and whatnot because a majority of the time people are going to charge interest, and they can afford to offer these benefits because more people are paying interest on their credit cards to allow them to offer those benefits. So it's almost like, dangling a carrot out in front of you to say, here's all these benefits we can give you, but secretly we're going to slap a 30% interest rate on your charges that you leave on and don't pay off. And then it's going to end up costing you money to have a credit card. But there are those who take advantage of it, whether it's, airline points, cash back on certain categories, or some other benefits. Some other credit cards do is like they'll pay for like TSA pre-check, or the new clear thing at the airport. They'll have all these different benefits that they'll pay for. They may even charge annual fee. There's annual fees on some credit cards upwards of $500-$600. But again, they're offering all these benefits. It can usually pay itself down. But just realize that there's a cost to these benefits, and don't fall victim to thinking you're getting a big benefit, but then you end up slapping a bunch of money on there and paying interest on it, and then it negates itself out, and you end up losing.
Yeah.
But wouldn't you say that like most credit cards, there is no annual fee? You might get like 2 or 3% cash back, but they don't charge you anything annually.
It depends. I feel like there's a lot. I mean, you have $49 fee, $99 fees, 500, 650 when you start getting into the complex business, or not business, but travel credit cards.
I mean,
But
you
there
have
are a
one,
lot.
Miles, that's pretty hefty, don't you? A fee?
Yeah, I feel like there's a couple out there, like Car said, some of the more travel heavy ones have the higher fees, but there's benefits that come with those as far as like traveling and statement credits and things like that. I think the most important thing is just, if you're willing to pay that fee, you have to make sure that the benefits are worth it. And that you're actually going to use the
That you're
benefits.
taking advantage of the
Because if you're
benefit.
not taking advantage, and I'm probably not the best, like there's things that I know I'm not taking advantage of on it, but there's also things I know I've used that I've taken advantage of that save money, and in the long run, to where I think it's worth it. Somebody else might look at that and be like, I'm not going to pay that much money because I can just spend that on travel myself and not have to put on a credit card.
Mhm.
But to your question, there are some solid cashback, I think, cards out there that, have no fee, and you get a couple 1 or 2% cash back. And then maybe they run some
Mhm.
of the promotional things like you mentioned, where you get, maybe it's 5% back or something like that, which
Yeah.
the argument is that better than paying that fee and maybe like, yeah, that might be. I think it depends on where you're spending your money at and what makes sense.
I've got the first one I opened was in college, and it was a $0 annual fee. I think it was a student card at the time because I didn't really have credit, but it's 1% on everything, or 5% on rotating categories every quarter. And I've never paid, since I've had it, never paid a dime of interest on it, never paid an annual fee. So I know from their perspective, I am a loss as far as the customer goes.
Yes.
But I'll take it. Like there's some
Yeah.
categories that I'm like, okay, I need to use this credit card this quarter because it's gas or it's groceries or it's Amazon, something like that. And that's a great thing to take advantage of, especially if you can be on top of it and pay it off.
Another thing about credit cards that I think is a plus is if you're traveling, and that's a safer way to travel is with a credit card versus like a debit card or even cash, because credit card companies will definitely work with you if there's some sort of fraud or something happens, you're charged wrong. It's much harder to get your money back if it's like a debit card from the bank.
That's right. And I know personally, I'm a fan of, I put everything on a credit card that I possibly can. You know, there's a couple things that you can't put on a credit card, like a mortgage payment, for example, just to get the points, but also, like you said, from a protection perspective, because I like swiping my card knowing that if it gets stolen, I am not responsible for any of those charges. And it's not my cash that's been stolen at this point. It's the credit, the form of credit that has been stolen. And usually a lot of credit companies will say that, you know, never pay for charges that you don't swipe or that you aren't the one charging. So they protect you from fraud. And it's not your cash versus a debit card. It's your true cash coming out of your bank account. So I agree. I'm a big fan of using credit cards really every day, but especially for travel.
But you're right. When you said, I mean, it's, you seem to spend more money. I agree with that. I think that gets some people in trouble when they're putting everything on their credit cards. You just have to know that you can pay it off. And that's one thing with like an American Express, for instance, you have to pay it off every single month. Like a lot of credit cards you don't, but those you do. And so I think some people purposely choose that so that they're forced to pay it off every month. I don't know.
Yeah. Or I think it's important just to track, like if you know who you are and feel like maybe you're going to charge a lot, just make sure you're looking at your statement online more than once a month, or you are using some sort of other budgeting app or expense tracking app to where you're still seeing what you're spending, even if it's not in your bank account, so that you know where you're at. I think,
yeah.
I mean, I think that's important in general for everybody, is just
I
to
do
be
too.
tracking things to some extent, so that you're not just swiping, get to the end of the month and your credit card statement is X amount of dollars and what you made was less than that, so that you're not getting ahead. I think it's just important to, again, track things so that you know exactly where things are at.
So I've got a question. What happened, like, okay, years ago, 10, 15, whatever, credit card interest rates were like 12, 13, 14, 15. Then I remember they jumped up to like 17, 18, creeping in up to 20. And now they're like literally 30 or more. What happened for that giant jump? I don't even know.
A couple factors that I'm aware of. One, the Federal Reserve interest rate. So it's the highest it's been since 2007.
Yeah.
So there's a big reason that it's as high as they are now. And two, it's based on credit. If you have a really good credit, they're not going to charge you as high of an interest rate, kind of just like a mortgage or a car loan or something. Those are the only two things I know of.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know because it's gradually been going up for years and years. It just blows my mind that it's like 30%.
Yeah, it is crazy. And I feel like the craziest thing that I've seen is, Jerry, and to your point, when let's just say credit card interest rates were at like 20%, they would occasionally send out like a flyer or a promotional thing that was like, hey, any purchases made from now till whenever are 0%. But that's when you need to be careful. Side note, that's when you need to be careful also, because if you don't pay that off, they go back and charge interest on the entire charge that you made, not what's just left. So you have to be careful about that. The other thing is that now I recently got a flyer on, like, if rates are at 30%, the promo rate dropped things to like 10%. So it wasn't like 0%. Again, it's, you're still at a 10% interest rate. So you have to be smart, even when you're looking at those promo rates. Again, they're not where they once were, but you just need to be aware that, hey, if I'm going to try and take advantage of something like this, I need to have that, because usually somebody's doing that's probably putting a larger amount on there to, like what your experience, Jan, where you want to pay the cash and you can get basically a free loan. You just need to know that when that date comes, things are paid off so that you are not left getting charged interest on the entire purchase that you put on that card.
Yep.
My daughter kind of learned the hard way. She's 25 now, and she got her first kind of her own credit card a few years ago, and it was one of those 0% interest for the first year. And so she had a balance, she was making payments, whatever, and then all of a sudden that first year ended and she owed a lot each month. She was like, "What's happening? Why? I was only having to pay $50. Now I'm having to pay like $250." And I was like, "Well, you didn't really pay attention to those dates." So definitely some lessons learned with credit card stuff.
Yep. There are some different functions of some credit cards at 0% interest for the first year, something like that. You can, and there's balance transfers. If you're not aware of how balance transfers work, but a lot of times credit cards will charge you a percentage fee of the balance that you move over, but then they won't charge you interest for the first year as a way to move over your balance to a new credit card company, and for it to potentially be better. So how it might work, let's say you're stuck on a credit card, you got 10 grand on it, and you're just getting eaten alive with interest. So what you could do is you can open up a new credit card that's offering a balance transfer promotion, maybe at 0% interest. But what they do is they might charge you like a 3% upfront fee. So you move over that 10 grand, they might charge you a balance transfer fee of 3%. So you pay $300 up front, but then you have 0% interest for 12 or 18 months, whatever promo they run. That can be advantageous. It can be a way to say, hey, I'm stuck. I'm getting charged so much interest on this credit card right now. I have a plan. I can probably knock it out in a year, but maybe I can find out a way to save some money on some interest by doing a balance transfer. That's not a bad idea. But again, just a word of caution when it comes to everything else. A lot of times, if you don't pay it off by then, they accrue back all the interest you would have been charged over that 12-month period and then slap it on top. So that's just something to think about if you find yourself stuck as a way to get out.
Yeah, you have to really be organized if you're going to kind of play those games. You just gotta know when those promos end. And I mean, a lot of stores and stuff do that too. You'll buy furniture or whatever. They'll say, hey, you can pay this off in 12 months, 0 interest, whatever. But as soon as that 12 months ends, they're going to get you if there's still a balance.
That's right.
Yeah. And I think if you are somebody who maybe feels like you got stuck or sitting there with a credit card balance, we see it all the time. I think you just need to have a plan in place. And maybe that's the time when, maybe you stop using that card. I know some people just cut it up and just start paying down the balance. But if you're feeling like you're stuck or sitting there with the balance, it's all about just finding a plan to get in place that works for you. Like any other debt, to get that paid down to where you can get it snowballing each month.
Yeah, because the worst thing you want to do is pay the minimum amount.
Yep.
That's the worst thing you could do. You're never going to get that paid off if you pay the minimum amount.
And if you're still charging to it each month, that's just that balance is just growing and you're not getting ahead. So kind of comes back to maybe that's where you just use cash or figure out some sort of balance transfer situation to where you can stop some of that high interest from being charged for a period of time to work on knocking that down. What other just tips or thoughts that you guys have on the use of credit cards or how to maybe focus on paying them down if you do see yourself stuck with a balance and interest is racking up each month?
I think for the most part, that's all the points that I had. The only recommendation when it comes to if you do have some credit card debt and you're trying to, if you have 3 or 4 paid off, a lot of times the focus could be, we talk about how money is more than just numbers and maximizing every penny. Sometimes there's emotional decisions you make, even though it might not make the most financial sense, and that's okay. But if you find yourself with a few credit cards that you need to get back control of, whatever's going to be the most motivating and encouraging thing to do, even if it might cost you a little bit more money, might end up being the right thing to do. For example, Miles, you're talking about the snowball. If you've got like a credit card with $1,000 left, hammer that down as fast as you can. Get one paid off, because mentally that's a big victory to have a credit card pay off, even if it might have a little bit lower interest rate than one of your others. Because then you can go right into, okay, I did this. I'm encouraged. I can keep doing this. Let me take that money I was going towards this one and I'll snowball, take that money and apply it to the next one, plus the minimum payment I was paying on that second one. So I like that approach personally, but it also depends if we're sitting here talking a difference between, 23 versus 24% interest, not that big of a deal. If we're talking like 5 and 30, that might be a different conversation. But
I was just saying, if you are on the flip side, if you're somebody who wants to utilize credit cards, I would say, or are using credit cards and just curious how to maximize them, just make sure you understand the benefits and what's available to you, and that you're true, and especially if you're paying a fee on that card, because if you're paying a fee, you need to make sure that you're taking advantage of the benefits that are there, because the credit card companies seem real nice by giving you travel bonuses and money back for traveling and all that, but they're not doing that for free. They're making money somewhere along the line. So if they're willing to give you that, it's not for free. They know they're going to make their money somewhere else. And so just make sure you're maximizing all the benefits that are out there, I would say.
And the only other tip I would say is sometimes credit card companies will work with you. If you call them, if you're struggling and you can't pay it, call them, let them know. Occasionally they'll help you out. They'll lower your rate. They may let you pause payments for a certain amount of time. There are different things. Some of them don't care. Some of them won't help you at all, but it's worth a call if it gets to that point.
What's the worst that can happen? They say no, then you keep on keeping on.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's all I've got, I think.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us again this week. I hope this was maybe enlightening or helpful for those who are users of credit cards, maybe not users, but trying to figure out how to incorporate them into their financial plan and spending habits, or for those that are sitting there with some sort of balance and maybe feeling a little stuck. So thanks for joining us on the Retire While You Work podcast, and we'll see you guys next week.
Any opinions are those of myself and not necessarily those of Raymond James. Expressions of opinion are as of this date and are subject to change without notice. The information contained in these podcasts do not purport to be a complete description of the securities market or developments referred to in this material. The information has been obtained from sources considered to be reliable, but we do not guarantee that the foregoing material is accurate or complete. Every investor situation is unique, and you should consider your investment goals, risk tolerance, and time horizon before making any investment. Prior to making an investment decision, please consult with your financial advisor about your individual situation. Any hypothetical examples are for illustration purposes only. Actual investor results will vary. Raymond James does not provide legal or tax services. Please discuss these matters with the appropriate professional.